All right, I heard it. Good morning, everybody. Again, like Amber said, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Dane Salentic. I'm the apprenticeship coordinator for the Iowa Department of Corrections. This has been an awesome last couple of days, so thank you all for joining us. And I'm really hoping you get something out of this presentation today that I'm going to provide. A lot of names on here that I recognize, a lot that I don't. So welcome and hello. For some of you, this presentation is probably going to be things that you've heard before, but hopefully you'll get a few different tidbits out of it that you didn't understand or you didn't know before. And for those of you that aren't quite sure about our programming inside the correctional facilities, well, you are in for a treat, because for about the next half an hour, we're going to talk about apprenticeships and prison industries. So welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. Maybe. There it is. So our outline today, really, again, I'm going to touch on our apprenticeship programs, how those work, what we have available, how the programming is, opportunities that we have within our facilities, and then also our prison industries enhancement program, which is through our Iowa Prison Industries, or IPI for short. And then the third piece is going to be how you can connect with our or participate, collaborate, volunteer, whatever you would like to do with our facilities across the state, because I do believe that's one area that I get asked a lot, is like, oh, well, I want to, I want to hire individuals, or I want to, come in and volunteer some time or whatever it may be, but you don't know how to connect with our facilities. So I will give you some contact information that will hopefully help answer all of those questions. So let's get started with the apprenticeship piece. So within our 9 institutions, we have 29 registered apprenticeship occupations. We became a sponsored representative through the Department of Labor in 2015. So we've had apprenticeships now for a while, but we've continued to grow those occupations since the inception in 2015. And I'm going to show you a list here in the next slide or two of what our programs are. And we really do try to hit most of the industry sectors, as you'll see. As of today, as I just looked a little bit ago, we do have 300 active apprentices throughout 9 facilities. And since we have started in 2015, we've had over 360 apprentices complete their program. So that's just a quick rundown of our numbers and our data for the apprenticeships, just to give you an idea how big and expansive they really are. So I always like to throw this slide in. I use this in just about every single presentation I use, because a lot of people have heard of apprenticeship, but they may not quite understand how it works. Like, what's the difference between apprenticeship and internship? I still get people calling our programs internships. It's like, oh, that's not correct. So there's really 5 main components. And I like the apprenticeship 101 slide. There's really 5 main components of registered apprenticeship. So first and foremost, you have to have an employer. In our circumstances, or our case, Iowa Department of Corrections is the employer. So for all of our programs, our incarcerated individuals, or IIs for short, they are working in our facilities in these jobs. And then the next 2 pieces, which I really call the meat and potatoes of our program, is the structured on-the-job training and the related training instruction. On-the-job training is what they learn, what they do on the job, the skills that they learn hands-on, right? That's what they learn from their mentors, their supervisors, managers, what have you, whatever job that is. The second piece is that related training instruction. That's the supplementary education or training that they get. And that's what I like to call the classroom component. We do have different ways that our individuals receive their related training instruction. Primarily, it's a self-study model. Most of our programs are self-study, whereas an individual will check out a book that's assigned to that program. They'll read the book, they'll take notes, and when they feel like they're ready to take the test, they will take the test, and if they pass, they go on to the next book. Our programs range from, some programs have 4 books, some programs are longer programs, anywhere from 18 to 20 books. It just kind of depends on the program. We also provide online training as well, and we also have in-class instruction at a couple of our sites. And then the final couple pieces is that reward for skills gains. So basically, it's that earn as you learn model, right? So as an apprentice, you come in, you're going to get paid a certain wage, but you know what that structure is as you progress through your training and through that job in the next, whatever it may be, 2 to 4 years. So you may be making $15 an hour to start with. but at the end, you know you're going to make $40 an hour. So again, you earn more as you learn more, right? The earn as you learn model. And then the last piece of registered apprenticeship is that credential, that national occupational credential that is provided by, by the Department of Labor. So if you complete all your requirements, you will get that certification from the Department of Labor. Basically, it's like a diploma for apprenticeship. So that's a quick, kind of just the main pieces of what registered apprenticeship is. So keep those in mind as we go through this so you can kind of understand how it all works within our facilities. So as I mentioned, we do have 29 occupations, and here's a list of those occupations. I'm not going to go through every one of them, even though I could, because I think each one of is important and brings its own value to our system. But if you look through this, you will see how robust they are, and that they do hit just about every single sector of industry. And that's not not by accident. We work closely with employers. We try to understand what the needs are in the state, and if we can provide that work opportunity within our prison walls, we will try to do that. And better yet, if it's apprenticeable, we'll add that apprenticeship along with that occupation. There's one program that we were going to start at Mitchellville, the certified nursing assistant, CNA, and unfortunately COVID kind of derailed that for us, but that would have put us in the healthcare sector as well. So we're looking to get that back hopefully here soon at our women's facility in Mitchellville. But that'll just be one more to add to the ever-growing list of our apprenticeship occupations that we have. Our programs range anywhere from 2,000 to 8,000 hours. So 2,000 hours is equivalent to basically 1 year's of work. And that's also based off 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40-hour model, right? So again, it's anywhere from 1 to 4 years. And the programs that have the asterisks next to them denote that they're an Iowa prison industry occupation. And most of those occupations, as you can see, are a little bit longer, a little more highly skilled. We're looking more in our trades type of programming there. So anyway, just wanted to give you an idea of kind of what programs that we have throughout the facility. And again, these are all real jobs in our prisons. So what are our goals? Like why do we do this? What's the point, I guess, right? You have the jobs, why not just let people work? Well, there's a few different reasons. Primarily, to start with, we want to provide that opportunity. And for those of you that have heard me speak before, apprenticeship is a pathway. I say this all the time. It's one path for an individual to navigate through that journey of being incarcerated. And unless you're going to be in for a very long time, or the rest of your life, you will be getting out of prison at some point. So that day one that you enter a facility, that's when that reentry process starts. So what can we provide them within corrections? And the speakers that we've had the last day and a half here, or day or so, we really try to provide that as much opportunity as we can within our facilities. What can we provide them while they go on that journey down that pathway of apprenticeship? So it really is, those work opportunities. My lane is apprenticeship, it's reentry, it's employability skills. So what can I provide these individuals while we have them incarcerated that they can complete, that once they get out, they can hopefully hit the ground running with what they've learned inside and the skills that they've learned to, secure a job and a good paycheck. So it's providing those opportunities, all of those apprenticeship opportunities. Purpose, give a sense of purpose to the offenders' lives while incarcerated. I like this point because we actually do let long-termers and lifers in prison participate in our apprenticeship. And it's, I get it quite often. Well, Dane, why do you allow them in when, what good is it going to do them? Well, believe it or not, they're actually some of our best workers, and they're the ones that have been there the longest, and they know those shops, they know that job inside and out. To them, prison is their life. That is what they wake up to every day, and that's what they're going to wake up to for the rest of their life. So they take it very seriously, and they're very passionate about what they do. So it only makes sense for us to, use them, their knowledge and expertise to help us build these programs and to train the next group of individuals coming in who will potentially be getting out. So again, it provides not only that sense of purpose for individuals who will be releasing, to help better themselves, but it provides that purpose for individuals who are going to be in for a long time or potentially the rest of their life, gives them a reason to get up in the morning. And then that education component, that again, you have your on-the-job training with apprenticeship, that education piece, that's just as important. And again, as I mentioned, we provide multiple ways that individuals can receive their education, again, whether it's in class, self-study, or online. One of our in-class programming primarily is at our house building site in our Newton Correctional Facility at the Homes for Iowa house building site, where our individuals are creating houses, 1,200 square foot houses from the ground up. And those are being shipped across the state for affordable housing in rural communities. And the curriculum there is a nationally recognized construction curriculum. It's called NCCR, and it's based out of Florida. And our staff are actually the teachers and instructors of that. Our staff come with years and years of expertise in the field or trade that they studied in. So who better than to train these guys in the classroom and also train them on the job as well. So the education piece, there's multiple ways that we can incorporate that. Another component is, again, going with that pathway model, is, again, what can we provide these individuals when we have them, regardless if they're in for 6 months or 16 years, along that path, what opportunities can we provide them? And that's where our community college partners come in. We have a community college within every one of our correctional facilities. And again, going back to our house building site, just to give you an example, we are working with Des Moines Area Community College, and we've implemented their construction certificate. So if you're in the apprenticeship at the house building site, not only are you in the apprenticeship, which you could get your Department of Labor certificate once you complete all your requirements, you're also receiving nationally accredited curriculum through NCCR, and you also can complete your DMAC construction certificate as well. And within that certificate, there's OSHA certification as well. So as you can see, we try to build and stack credentials. So whatever part of that journey an individual it releases or leaves prison, even if they didn't complete everything, they at least can take with them, well, look at what I've been able to accomplish while I was in prison. I was able to reach, 1,200 hours of my on-the-job training, and I've got this and this credential to show for it. So it's not a failure if someone doesn't complete. It's more of what can we provide them along that path and give them that light at the end of the tunnel. And then lastly is the ultimate goal, right? The reducing recidivism. That's kind of what we do in DOC. That's the whole point. We don't want return customers. We have enough customers coming in on a daily basis. We don't need them coming back as we progress through the year. So what can we do to make, reduce the recidivism and make communities safer? And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to show you a slide that I think really drives home, how important these programs are and how successful they really are. So that's the main goals of the apprenticeship program. And as a coordinator, what I see going forward is again, it's providing those opportunities, working with employers to understand, hey, what is your needs? What training do you want us to implement? How can we partner with you to help better this program? So when an individual goes through it, once they get out, they can, like I said before, basically just hit the ground running and get that job and know what they need to do. The employer's confident and comfortable with the skills that they've learned to hire them in that position. And then they can get back to their, communities, much safer and well-rounded. So let's jump gears a little bit, or switch gears a little bit, to our Iowa prison industries. So within Iowa prison industries, we do have multiple apprenticeship programs. As I showed you in the slide before, there's a handful of apprenticeships that fall, within Iowa prison industries. So for those of you that aren't familiar, IPI, Iowa Prison Industries, is a 100% self-funded program within the Department of Corrections that provides that work training for men and women. So it's real work. It's a business. We're working with clients. We're working with customers. We're building things, creating things, providing services throughout the state. There's over 800 offenders daily that work. So they're incarcerated individuals. There's over 800 of those across the state in all of our facilities. They account for over 1 million hours of work training yearly, which that's an insane amount of hours. And then there's a gamut of skills and jobs that are done within IPI. You've got your welding, you've got textiles, which is, in a couple of our facilities where they're creating their uniforms for our officers, uniforms for police departments. They're making gowns and healthcare textiles and garments for, hospitals and doctors' offices. So, things that you didn't think we would do in prison, we're actually really doing, and it's awesome work. We have farms. Our prison industries oversees some farms. I'll get to a slide in that in a second, but you didn't know that either. We have a whole herd of cows. It's crazy. And the house, and obviously the house building site at our Newton Correctional Facility. So those are just a few of the programs within Iowa Prison Industries. And again, it just, as I said with the apprenticeship program, these programs, these opportunities just provide that positive reinforcement to our individuals, provides that sense of value. They're a valued member of the shop, of our programs, that ultimately will hopefully translate once they release. We'll get a quick drink here. So eligible customers of IPI. So I wanted to throw this in because IPI can't work with just anybody. Again, we are a state agency, DOC is a state agency, obviously, and IPI falls under that. So who can we work with? Well, here's the list. Your government agencies, public and private schools, colleges, universities, your Iowa State, UNIs, and then other nonprofit organizations. And if you, as a state worker or a worker employee of one of these entities, you can be a customer of Iowa Prison Industries as well. I like to tell the story. When I first started, my wife and I had a 120-year-old dining room table set that we really liked, but man, it looked like it was 120 years old. And so I called up the IPI shop in our Fort Madison facility and said, hey, could you restain this and reupholster our chairs? And they said, yep, absolutely. So I packaged it up. We sent it to Fort Madison, and in a few months I got it back and it looked like a brand new table. So the skills that these men and women have are insane, especially when it comes to like the woodworking and in our shops of creating things. So that's just one example of how you could potentially use IPI if you need something done. Again, if you're an eligible customer. So there's really three main branches of IPI. Your traditional industries, which is kind of what most people think of when you think of jobs inside of prison, your IPI farms, and then your private sector partnerships. And the private sector, I'm going to hit on a little bit more in detail here in a couple slides. So your traditional industries, again, these fall within about 6 of our institutions. We don't have shops in every single institution, but they're your manufacturing and your service jobs, right? When you think of prison, a lot of people think of license plates, and we have that shop, and it's amazing. And if you've ever seen how a license plate's created, it's probably not quite what you thought, but it is a cool process. We also have the sign shop where, going down the highway or interstate, you see those signs, the highway signs, traffic signs, those are created and made within IPI at our Anamosa facility. Furniture, we build the furniture for dorm rooms across the state for colleges and universities. We create or build and make lockers, desks, chairs for our public schools. It's interesting to walk into a shop and see a whole row of like 50 or 60 lockers with a school's name on it, getting ready to ship out. Like, oh, that's where those come from. As a kid, you don't think of that, but like, oh, well, there they are. That's where they're made, in prison. But we also have call centers, moving, laundry, recycling, all of these different services that we provide within IPI. And again, as you can see, 70 staff across the state. We, employ almost 500 individuals working in these jobs with 24 million in annual sales. So again, it is a very robust, real business within Department of Corrections. And real quickly, the farms. I like to throw this in there because, again, a lot of people don't know that we have these farms, but we do have almost 5,000 acres of farmland across the state that IPI oversees, with 830 head of cows and calves. But I think one of the biggest things right now is we do have a lot of garden land where we raise and grow produce that goes right back to the facilities to be eaten and be used throughout the year. And if you've ever been to a prison in the springtime or within the summer and you see just the rows and rows of watermelons or cabbage or tomatoes, it's pretty impressive the amount of food that is actually grown and sustained within our walls and outside of our facilities. So, but yeah, we have farms within IPI. And then the private sector piece. So this is the third branch of Iowa Prison Industries. And this is one I'd like to touch on a little bit more. This is where our PI program falls in. So with our private sectors, where we actually work with employers throughout the state, private companies, and they actually hire our individuals to either work inside the facilities or outside, depending on where they are and what the transportation looks like, or what the facility needs are. And the employers hire these individuals just like they would hire anyone else. They pay market wages. The offender or the incarcerated individuals actually get to keep 20% of those wages. The rest of those wages go back to IPI, they go back to DOC, but they also cover fines, restitution, child support, a number of things that an individual may have to pay back due to the crime that they committed. So it is still a really good opportunity for these individuals. 20% of the market wages is still a pretty good paycheck for an individual within prison. And we have over 400 individuals working statewide, private sector. So they're actually hired by a company working for them, whether that's inside our walls or outside. So within that private sector branch is the Prison Industries Enhancement Program, or the PI program. And again, it really just, it fills that void for employers who need to fill vacant positions. This is an opportunity. We have an entire pipeline, an entire pool of individuals who are work ready, who are ready to work at all hours of the day, weekends, nights, holidays, whatever it may be. So it allows private businesses to hire those incarcerated individuals that need to fill those vacant positions. And again, it provides that work, that valuable work experience for the individuals as well who are being hired. You're working for a real employer while you're incarcerated. You got to follow their rules, work within the confines of their facility, potentially work alongside other employees, how to be a good teammate, be a good worker. So again, it's providing those real life skills. And I know it's been mentioned a couple times before, but in the last day or so, but 95% is an important stat. I think 95% of incarcerated individuals will be released back to our communities. So these programs, within, whether it's an apprenticeship or apprenticeship within Prison Industries, working with employers, are crucial to help these individuals succeed once they get back. And again, I know a lot of people kind of, that's an eye opener when they see that, because when you think of prison, you think long stays, people are in there forever, they're going to be in there for years. That's really not the case. So again, it comes down to what can we do while we have these individuals inside the walls to help better them upon release. So how does the PI program work? There's three main steps. First and foremost, you go through the approval application process, which could take up to 90 days. And the reason being is because you do have to post your open positions with Iowa Workforce Development, and you have to show that you're not getting the skilled or the qualified workers applying that you need to fill those positions. And then once you've shown that hey, I've had this job open for 3 months and I've gotten 10 applicants and none of them qualify for this position, then you would potentially be approved. And then that's when you would be able to hire our individuals. And again, there's a lot more into what is the position, where are you located, how much you're going to pay, all of those things. But ultimately, you would get approved, go ahead and work on the hiring processes and what those wages would be. And then that third step would be the incarcerated individuals would work under your supervision as the employer, and they could work any shift, they would work alongside your other employees. We do have, like I said, a handful of employers that have utilized this, and they couldn't be say more highly praise of these programs and of the workers. They realize, coming in like, oh, how is this going to work? Is our employees going to be able to get, how are they going to think of us bringing in individuals from prison? And honestly, usually it's been a seamless transition. Our workers, they want to be there, they want to work, they don't want to cause trouble. They want to do a good job because they know this is an amazing opportunity. So I'd be more than happy to chat with anyone, outside of the presentation on this, because I'm sure there's quite a few questions on more details of how this works. But ultimately, these are the three main areas or three main steps of how to get into the PI program and how to get it started. And just a couple other details to it. The implementation, again, we would provide basic training on how to supervise our IIs as they come to you if they're coming to your facility. Again, there's some obvious things of the men and women wouldn't be allowed to use tobacco, cell phones, or handle any type of money. So we have to make sure the jobs that they're going to be hired for, would qualify them so they wouldn't get, be in violation of any of the rules that are in place. And then you as the employer, if again, you want them to come to your site, you would provide that transportation to and from the facility. And then again, the wages as by state and federal law require that, you pay similar wages to those of the civilian workers in that specific job. And again, they would work, you wouldn't pay benefits, vacation pay or holiday pay, but they could work overnights. That's third shift, which is so hard to find people to work these days, weekends, and also on holidays. So again, you have a whole pool of candidates here potentially that you could fill some of your positions. So that connection piece, all right? So a lot of information there with apprenticeships and IPI, but again, I get so often, it's like, well, I don't know who to contact. I want to ask some questions, or I want to get involved. I'm in the northeastern part of the state. There's not really a prison within an hour from me. What can we do? So first and foremost, Dan Clark is the director of Iowa Prison Industry. So if you are interested in that PI program or wanting to learn more information, he's the individual that you would reach out to, anything prison industries. If you have any questions about our apprenticeship programs, how to, what we can do to connect you with employer or with some of our apprentices, training opportunities, volunteer opportunities, whatever that may be, you can always reach out to me. And there's our contact information there. But really throughout the state, we have amazing staff in every one of our facilities that helps keep this machine of apprenticeship and IPI moving and being successful. And these are the individuals in all of the facilities that are the apprenticeship sponsors. So they help oversee the apprenticeship programs throughout the facility, or their reentry advisor or reentry coordinator within the facility. And we also have some Iowa workforce development advisors working within our walls as well. So they're actually IWD staff, but they work daily inside of our prisons. And they're in 4 of our institutions. So any one of these individuals would be able to help you connect or set, a meeting up if you wanted to, potentially host a virtual job fair, if you wanted to chat with somebody, or send your applications. Really with employers, I tell you, it's how far do you want to go with it? You can send us a flyer and say you're hiring, or you could physically come into our facilities potentially and host a job fair in person or virtually, whatever everyone's more comfortable with. So I always say the ball's kind of in your court of what you want to do. The problem is you don't know how to get started. I think a lot of times employers don't. So now you have that contact information. And again, when in doubt, you could always reach out to me as well. So again, these are individuals across the state and all of our facilities that you could reach out to as far as any reentry, employability, hiring needs that you have. And lastly, this is probably my favorite slide. So I've been in this position for 4 years now, and I hopefully you can tell I'm very passionate about this, and I truly believe in what we do within corrections, and that and in having an executive team from our director all the way through to our facilities, our wardens, who understand the importance of these training programs and how impactful they are for individuals when they get out to receive this training inside. That's huge, and it really helps us as staff do our jobs well. But I know the stuff works. I know the apprenticeship. I know these things are positive, but I never had the data to really back that up. And now we do. So over the last year, we've actually had a research project done in our apprenticeship programs by the Department of Human Rights, Division of Criminal and Juvenile Justice Planning. And they just, they over the, like I said, the last year, they've focused, they found data, stats of our programs. And the report was just released a couple weeks ago, the initial report, and the final report's actually going to be hopefully released by next week with all of the findings. But one of the biggest things that they found again, going back to our main goal within DOC is recidivism. And if you're in an apprenticeship, and if you complete your apprenticeship, you're only 16% likely to recidivate. And as you can see, the state recidivism rate right now is approximately 38%. And even if you don't complete your apprenticeship, it's the recidivism rate is 32%. So you can see that this drastically cuts down that recidivism rate for individuals who are in these programs, but especially when they complete these programs. Now, there's a lot of data, a lot of stats that go into this. So if you're a stat junkie, data nerd, that report will be coming out so you can dive into that. But I didn't want to inundate everyone with that. I really just wanted to show you the hard numbers of this. And, the report also looks at wages and how if you've completed an apprenticeship, the level of wages that individual has higher compared to an individual who's released and hasn't gone through an apprenticeship or completed an apprenticeship. So there's other awesome stats within this report, but this was the main one I wanted to show you because people ask me all the time, but Dane doesn't work. And this, I think, proves that it does work. And again, it's a testament to everyone that's involved in these programs. And understand the importance of them. So I just wanted to show that just to kind of, highlight, and bring this home of, yes, we have these programs, they're great, but do they really work? And this, I think, really shows that. So with that said, I think I've talked enough. So thank you all. I will stop sharing my screen. If you have questions there, that's a dog raising his hand to ask a question, by the way. If you guys didn't get that. So yeah, thank you everybody. And I'll be glad to take some questions. I think I have a couple minutes left. Oh, plenty of time.
Yeah, you do, Dane. Thank you so much. That was great. We do have some questions in the chat. What happens if they don't complete all the apprenticeship requirements before they're released? Do they just transfer their hours and skill level to an outside company?
So one of the beauties of our program is they can complete this program once they've released, because once they've released from prison, 99% of the times they're still under DOC supervision. So they're still technically our apprentice. So that's why, we tell our apprentices, try to get as much as that related training instruction done as you can, because if you can complete all of your books, then if you don't complete your hours, your on-the-job training hours, you can actually get hired on once you release to an employer in that same occupation. And all that employer would have to do is send me your hours that you're working, and then we would count that towards your total until you complete. So we've actually had quite a few individuals do this, and we just work closely with that employer, let them know what the situation is. Like, hey, John Smith, he's so close to completing his program. He only needs 1,000 hours left. Would you be willing just to send me his timesheets or an email saying how much time he's worked, since he's been there, or on a monthly basis? And usually, well, so far every employer has been great with that. So they can complete it once they release. They also could, if they haven't completed their apprenticeship, say it's a welding apprenticeship or electrician apprenticeship, they could then potentially transfer those hours out and start that apprenticeship. If that employer offers that as well, then they would become that employer's apprentice. So there's a couple different ways, but yes, they could complete those programs even if they release.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dane. Can interested companies near prisons partner with the apprenticeship programs listed to provide the work experience and pay wages?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's multiple ways that we could work together. It depends on the facility. It depends on the jobs. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But absolutely, I'd love to have that conversation just to see what you were thinking, and what ideas you have, because even if an employer comes in and does an information session of, hey, this is what our company is, this is what we do, this is what we look for, that is huge in and of itself. Or maybe an employer wants to come in and say, an HR manager from a company, hey, I'm really interested, I want to, the hiring process has changed, so much in the last few years. I'd really like to, do a short presentation on, resume writing or interviewing, what does a company look for in interviewing, those kind of things. So there's multiple ways that we can connect with that. So yeah, absolutely. It'd just be a matter of reaching out to me.
Okay. Are individuals paid market rate for working for IPI in the non-private sector?
No, so within our prisons, we have our own set wages with those job opportunities. IPI does pay more than a regular institutional job, but it is not market wages. No.
Okay. Can you send out the slide presentations?
Yes, I can do that. And I also would like to, at some point, when that report gets of our apprenticeship program, if you're interested in that, you can always reach out to me. But I know that will be making the circulation once it's officially finalized and released. So we can do that as well.
Okay.
So Amber, I can just send you the presentation. Okay. I also have a flyer I would like to send you all. It has those contact informations of everybody on that slide, just so you have it, so you can save it to your computer and just know that it's there. So
Perfect. Do the people completing apprenticeship programs go into the PI programs, or are the two separate things?
So we do have, they're primarily they're two separate things. That's a good question. But we do actually we are working with actually two mold injection companies in the state that we have actually created with them a mold injection machine operator apprenticeship. And it's a 1-year program. So in order for them, so to work with this private sector company, they would be in this apprenticeship. And again, we worked closely with those two companies to say, hey, this is what we want to do. So we're getting training on their end as well, with the training on our end with our books and other things. So it's an awesome setup. And that to me is the ideal way of doing this, is to collaborate with an employer on the training, especially if it's an apprenticeable occupation, which this happened to be. And it's only a 2-year or a 1-year program. So this is one where a lot of individuals can complete it. We actually have, I want to say 50 apprentices in that program statewide now since we started it. So it's one of our more highly numbered programs, but that's just because we have a lot of job opportunities there. So not all private sector jobs within IPI are apprenticeable, so they wouldn't have that piece of it. But I know Dan Clark and I are also working, trying to figure out if we can create some training opportunities, a different credential, if you will, not necessarily apprenticeship, for our other individuals that are working with private sector or within IPI, so that when they leave, they can also have something to take with them, a piece of paper basically saying, this is what I've done, this is what I've accomplished.
Wonderful. What percentage of those that start an apprenticeship are able to complete it? Just asking as related to the recidivism piece.
Yeah, and there's so many factors that go into that. I don't have that off the top of my head. I can definitely get that. It really depends, length of stay, transfers, just because if you're in an apprenticeship in one facility and you're doing fine, you're doing great, and you have an opportunity to transfer to another facility that is going to help you, kind of basically working your way through the system and working your way to release, you're going to get transferred. And unfortunately, not every facility has every single job offered, so they wouldn't have an apprenticeship potentially. So we do have that quite often happen, where an apprentice is working and then they get transferred and that job doesn't exist. So now their apprenticeship is ultimately done. We don't necessarily cancel them out. It really depends on what they want to do. A lot of times they just go into another apprenticeship. So you look at our numbers and you really have to take that into consideration, because just because we've had people cancel that program doesn't necessarily mean that that's a negative. It's just kind of the process, and just unfortunately just the way the system is and the barriers that we have within our facilities. We have had a lot of cancellations. If you just look at the raw numbers, yeah, we've had a ton of cancellations. But if you go back and really dissect it, why, you'll also see that a lot of those individuals who canceled from a program then start another program. We've had a few individuals who've done like 6 or 7 apprenticeships. It's insane, but that's just the opportunities that they were given, and they took advantage of that. So yeah, and that's where this apprenticeship report is fantastic, because we really do dive into that, and we actually have another year's worth of research to do to really hone in on what programs are successful, based off individuals releasing and the jobs that they get. And then maybe we can scale back a few of our programs. Maybe we don't need 29. maybe there's other things that we can look at to really pour more resources into a handful of programs that are really successful. So again, I'm super excited because we finally are going to have some data to say, yes, this is working, this isn't, this is working, and this is what we can do going forward.
Great, thank you, Dane. Please discuss how African Americans make up the largest percentage of the Iowa prison population and receive less opportunities to work at IPI apprenticeship programs.
Well, that kind of goes to the hiring process. Again, with the apprenticeship, you have to have the job. And this is another one of those factors that we have to take in consideration is, so even though our apprenticeship, and if you look at our diversity numbers as far as our programs go, it really is very close to our overall prison population. But for the apprenticeship, individuals need to get hired first before they can become an apprentice. And the apprenticeship really doesn't have any much anything really to do with its hiring processes. I do know that's obviously an area, and I know Katrina touched on this a little bit yesterday, of a area that we're really focusing on as far as DOC wide. But it's true. Why are those numbers so different within our shops, within our individuals getting hired? And I think that's what we need to take a look at. I don't have those answers off the top of my head, but I do know that that's an area, especially with IPI, and I know Dan Clark is looking into that. What is it? Why aren't we getting an equal number of individuals from all across our population getting these jobs? What are we? And we really need to look at that.
Thank you. Are individuals who complete apprenticeships connected with employers before release? Are any hired on post-release with employers who they worked for while incarcerated?
Yes, and yes. And again, it really depends on the employer, and it depends on that individual. Each individual has their own path. And even though they may be in an apprenticeship with 20 other people in that same program, they're not all going to be the same. They're not all at the same level. They're not all going to go to the same place in the state of Iowa. They're not all going to get hired in that occupation. So that's where our staff, that's where our apprenticeship sponsors, our reentry staff, those IWD advisors do an amazing job working individually with each person, not just individuals in the apprenticeship or IPI, just across the board to help them prepare for release. So I think it really is an individual basis. But yes, our staff do work with employers, and we have had individuals who have worked with a company before, as they were incarcerated, and then get hired on by that company once they've released.
Okay. And then some great feedback here. The Vocational Village program in Michigan has a profound effect in reducing recidivism. I'm certain the PI program will keep reducing recidivism in Iowa. Keep going. And then another question. You're popular today, Dane.
I guess so, or either I didn't really explain much, or maybe just a lot of questions. I don't know. Either way, how everyone look at it.
How does the new DOC tool policy impact the availability of people to participate in an apprenticeship?
Yeah, and that definitely, we've had to ultimately shut down some shops with the new safety and security requirements. So it has impacted a few of our programs. It depends on the facility. It depends on the shop. It just, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So we have had a pivot on a few different of our programs in a couple of our facilities. But then it's like we look and see, okay, well, we can't have this opportunity. What other opportunities can we do? So I know, take the penitentiary in Fort Madison, for example. We did have to close a couple shops down there, but then we started a textile shop. With obviously don't have the amount of tools that is required for those shops. So we pivoted to a different program, which those individuals, we've added actually 20 apprentices in that shop alone in our sewing machine programs. So yes, it has had an impact, but honestly, like I said, we have so many different opportunities that we just really try to incorporate the ones that we can where we can.
Okay, perfect. Another question here. How do African Americans get hired?
The process is the same across the board. And again, going back to the previous question, there's really no difference. The application process is the application process. So it's more of, I think we, maybe as collectively look at, maybe why are some individuals not applying for jobs, or certain jobs? Is there a reason for that? What does that look like? Or, so there's really diving into that, which again, we as an agency, we really do take that seriously, and we are. But that hiring process is the same across the board. And if you get hired, and there's an apprenticeable occupation, you're automatically eligible. The Department of Labor requires that you have that you be a U.S. citizen and you have a high school diploma or equivalency. And 99% of the individuals hired into IPI, that high school component is a piece of that hiring process anyway. So once you're hired, you are basically eligible to be in that apprenticeship. So it's really that hiring process, and getting people to apply in those jobs.
Okay, let's see what else.
Yeah, I saw a question about the tool policy, and we won't be discussing that.
And any other questions here? I don't think we have any other questions. If anyone else want to ask anything? Perfect. Oh, wait, maybe one more. Give me a second. Okay. So I think
Yes.
So this is Danny Halberg. I want to say, I work a lot with Homes for Iowa guys, and we actually do a great job going back and forth with HiSET. And so I kind of feed into them, and then Chad feeds back to me, and he does a great job of working with kind of moving their times around so that they can come in and get held and be successful in both places. I just want to point out that there's a lot of cooperation that goes on between within the facilities and within the organizations that I think people don't necessarily know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't do it justice. I can't reiterate enough how important that is and how many people are involved to help one individual be successful, and it really is a team effort. I'm here presenting on this, but I'm just one piece of it. It's really, the boots on the ground, the staff at the facilities, the counselors, the managers, supervisors, unit managers, all of them, everyone from the warden on down, from our director on down, everyone plays a role in this. And it really is a collaborative issue or thing that we do as far as a team. One example is in our Fort Dodge facility, our apprenticeship sponsor, there was an individual who was releasing, and he was going to get transferred to another facility actually. And I remember I was looking at that email thread, and it was like 9 different emails to 7 different people just to help this one individual secure a job when he transfers to that other facility. And it's like, wow, and that's just the dedication that there is from that apprenticeship sponsor to really help this guy know when he goes to this next facility that he's going to have this job to complete his program. And there wasn't even an opening. So that facility then had to accommodate, say, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll create a position, or we want him to finish. So we'll figure this out. And that's just one example of how we all work together with this. So thanks, Danny.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dane, for your time. This was an excellent presentation, wonderful questions. Our next session will start at 11 a.m. And so we'll take a break until then.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And again, reach out if you have any questions.